I'm Jeff Long, the assistant general manager of the San Antonio Missions Baseball Club. I was in the ballpark in 1988, and there's a story here. Well, I was in my first year in working for our current team president, Burl Yarbrough, in 1988, so it was all new to me, and I was at the ballpark that night working. We had a really small staff at that time because the ballpark was small, and I was actually pouring beer for fans on the patio, which was behind the Missions dugout on the third base side. It was a small ballpark, probably not quite half the size of Wolf Stadium, and it provided a really up close and intimate setting for fans to watch all the great ball players that came through when we were affiliated with the Dodgers, which was our major league affiliate at that time. And we had a unique area on the third base side where I was working that night. It was a patio area with patio chairs and tables, and it was quite a popular area as well, and it was right behind the Missions dugout. I think once we get past midnight, that's when we realize this could be a long night. And the longer we played that night, and the more exhausted the hitters became, we realized the less likely it was that we would actually score or have either team score. It was 0-0, and it was a scoreless game. And, for the game to end, one of the two teams had to be able to push a run across the plate. It was a weeknight game, as I remember it. And so, with it being a work day the next day, people generally started leaving between 10 and 10:30. And, the crowd dwindled with each passing inning that no run was scored. We served beer up until midnight, which is as long as our liquor license allowed us to serve. I can't really say for sure what time concessions started shutting down. I think they may have kept one stand open, but I do believe at some point they did shut down because there was about 150 fans remaining, and I think at some point somebody made a breakfast taco run and brought them back to the ballpark, and we, of course, let them bring them in. After 25 innings, both teams were out of pitchers. They had utilized all their pitchers, and, short of putting a position player in to pitch, which was not an ideal situation, the two managers, the Missions manager and the Jackson manager, came out to home plate and huddled with the umpires. And at that point, the decision was made that the crew chief of the umpiring crew would come into our office and would make a phone call to the league president, who was at that time Carl Sawatsky, who lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. And as I remember it was about 20 minutes of 3 when they called Carl and got him out of bed and explained the situation to him. And he made the decision to suspend play at that point. We had played 25 scoreless innings, and of course the next night we didn't resume the suspended game because both pitching staffs were still fairly well depleted from pitching so many innings the night before. And I think that was a Friday night. And then on Saturday, we started with the suspended game in the top of the 26th inning, and Jackson didn't score in the top of the 26th, and then as fate would have it, we scored in the bottom of the 26th to win the game. As far as the mood of the team, I mean, they were just all exhausted and incredulous at what had transpired. And what's interesting is even the national media started hearing about it, and they started calling. I think ESPN had started by then, and they talked about it on ESPN. I think maybe some of the late night shows had picked up on it as well, and so it brought us some national notoriety at that time. There's been a lot of different names attached to the franchise. Um, Missions was originally Missionaries and was shortened to Missions. The Bullets were the farm club of the Colt 45s, which preceded the Houston Astros. The Dodgers were, that was a name adopted under Mr. Turner, Tom Turner, who owned the team and affiliated with the Dodgers. And, when Mr. Elmore bought the team, he wanted to return San Antonio's baseball team to San Antonio. And it had historically, longer than any other name, had been known as the Missions. And that's when we went back to the Missions in 1988. I remember the Brewers as well. My parents used to take me to VJ Keefe when I was a kid, and we would watch the San Antonio Brewers, which, it was a name of the major league affiliate, but there was some local tie-in there with Lone Star and Pearl being here in San Antonio. I remember in 1968, my little league baseball coach taking me to VJ Keefe for the clinic day, and I remember the player that was in charge of my group. His name was Brock Davis, and I mean that's where my fandom started, was in 1968. So to me, and I think my age group, and probably the generation before me, the Missions is what we'd always known. There was different names in between, but I think that's why in 1988, when we returned to the Missions, it was such a big deal.